Good morning, dear children. How are you all doing? Taking care of yourself? Great. Children, have you heard about Stephen Hawking? Stephen Hawking was a physicist, cosmologist, and author who was director of research at the Center of Theoretical Cosmology at the University of Cambridge. In 1963, at the age of 21, Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with a form of motor neuron disease that gradually paralyzed him for decades. He also lost his speech. In spite of being challenged at an early age, Stephen Hawking involved himself in many scientific works. He was the scientist who made the theoretical prediction that black holes emit radiation, and this was named after him as Hawking radiation. His book, A Brief History of Time, was a bestseller. But why am I speaking about Stephen Hawking? Because today we are going to learn about a person who had faced similar challenges in his life, yet moved ahead with an undaunted spirit and went on to achieve something very unusual, that is helping people with similar challenges even today. We'll learn about Louis Braille. Louis Braille was a French boy who lost his vision at the age of 3 while playing with some sharp tools. Let's read what happened later and how did young Braille went on to become the light in the lives of visually challenged with his system of reading called Braille. On page number 39, the story of Louis Braille. There was a time not long ago when most people thought that blind people could never learn to read. People thought that the only way to read was to look at words with your eyes. A young French boy named Louis Braille thought otherwise. Blind from the age of 3, Louis Braille wanted to read. He realized that vast world of thought and ideas that was locked out to him because of his disability. Disability is a condition that doesn't allow a person to move around like other normal people. And he was determined to find the key to this door for himself. Determined is to make a firm decision, children, and for all other blind people. This story begins in the early part of the 19th century. Louis Braille was born in 1809 in a small village called near Paris. His father made harnesses, saddles, and other leather goods to sell to other villagers. Louis' father often used sharp tools to cut and punch holes in the leather. One of the tools he used to make holes was a sharp awl. An awl is a tool that looks like a short pointed stick with a round wooden handle. While playing with one of his father's awls, Louis' hand slipped and he accidentally poked one of his eyes. At first, the injury did not seem serious, but then the wound became infected. A few days later, young Louis lost sight in both his eyes. The first few days after becoming blind were very hard. So we understand that Louis was not blind with birth. When he was born, he was a very healthy baby. But later on, when he was 3 years old, he was playing with his father's tools and accidentally lost his sight. But as the days went by, Louis learned to adapt. Adapt means adjusting yourself to the changes and learned to lead an otherwise normal life. He went to school with all his friends and did well in his studies. He was intelligent, creative, and hardworking. He was not going to let his disability slow him down one bit. Wow, very determined, isn't it, children? That should be the spirit. As he grew older, he realized that small school he attended did not have the money and the resources he needed. Resources are the things that we require or we utilize. He heard of a school in Paris that was especially for blind students. Louis did not have to think twice about going. He packed his bags and went off to find himself a good education. When he arrived at the special school for the blind, he asked his teacher if the school had books for blind people to read. Louis found that the school did have books for the blind to read. These books had large letters that were raised up off the pages. Since the letters were so big, the books themselves were large and bulky. More importantly, the books were expensive to buy. The school had exactly 14 of them. Louis set about reading all 14 books in the school library. He could feel each letter, but it took him a long time to read a sentence. It took a few seconds to reach each word, and by the time he reached the end of a sentence, he almost forgot what the beginning of the sentence was about. Louis knew there must be a better way. There must be a way for a blind person to quickly feel the words on a page. There must be a way for a blind person to read as quickly and as easily as a sighted person. That day, he set himself the goal of thinking of a system for blind people to read. He would try to think of some alphabet code to make his finger reading as quick and easy as sighted reading. Now, Louis was a tremendously creative person, tremendously to a very great extent. He learned to play cello and organ at a young age. He was so talented an organist that he played at churches all over Paris. Music was really his first love. It also happened to be a steady source of income. Now, here we can understand Louis was not only creative, intelligent, but he was also very independent at a very early age. Louis had great confidence in his own creative abilities. He knew that he was as intelligent and creative as any other person in his own age, and his musical talent showed how much he could accomplish when given a chance. Accomplish is to achieve, children. One day, Chance walked in the door. Somebody at the school heard about an alphabet code that was being used by the French army. This code was used to deliver messages at night from officers to soldiers. The messages could not be written on paper because the soldier would have to strike a match to read it. The light from the match would give the enemy a target at which to shoot. The alphabet code was made up of small dots and dashes. These symbols were raised up off the paper so that soldiers could read them by running their fingers over them. Once the soldiers understood the code, everything worked fine. Here, Louis could get to know about a code system that was being followed by the French army. The messages were delivered from the officers to the soldiers during nights. And at nights, we cannot read without light, isn't it? Uh, so, to view the message on the paper, the army or the soldiers would have to light up the place. And if the soldiers are going to light up the place, definitely the enemies will be able to make out where the soldiers are placed. And enemies would definitely shoot the soldiers. To avoid this, the army has found out a way of of raised dots and dashes on piece of paper, which can be felt by finger by the soldiers. And this this new method has worked very well with the army. Louis got hold of some of this code and tried it out. It was much better than reading the gigantic books with gigantic raised letters. But the army code was still slow and cumbersome. The dashes, cumbersome means unmanageable. Okay, children? The dashes took up a lot of space on a page. Each page could only hold one or two sentences. Louis knew that he could improve this alphabet in some way. On his next vacation home, he would spend all his time working on finding a way to make his improvement. When he arrived home for school vacation, he was greeted warmly by his parents. His mother and father always encouraged him in his music and other school projects. Louis sat down to think about how he could improve the system of dots and dashes. He liked the idea of the raised dots, but could do without the raised dashes. As he sat there in his father's leather shop, he picked up one of his father's blunt awls. The idea came to him in a flash. The very tool which had caused him to go blind could be used to make a raised dot that would enable him to read. The next few days, he worked very hard on an alphabet made up entirely of 6 dots. The position of the different dots would represent the different letters of the alphabet. Louis used the blunt awl to punch out a sentence. He read it quickly from left to right. Everything made sense. It worked. Louis Braille's raised dot system of reading and writing is known as Braille. It is used by visually challenged people all over the world. As we have as we have discussed earlier, visually challenged are the people who cannot see. Okay, so children, here we come to the end of the lesson. I would like to mention here about the lessons that we can learn from this particular lesson. To start with, as we discussed, Louis was all fine until the age of 3. His playing with sharp tools had made him go blind. Though our Louis was very young, he couldn't have understood that playing with sharp objects can be harmful, isn't it? But we do understand, so we should be avoiding playing with harmful objects. Next, Louis, in spite of being visually challenged, has never put himself back, was never discouraged. He was always with a spirit of accomplishing something. So that should be the spirit each one of us should be carrying within ourselves, so that we become someone great like Louis Braille. Thank you.